Hello friends and foes, my name is Cait and this is my channel Chapter Cait. And today I'm going to be reacting to bad takes about bipolar disorder on Twitter. Twitter is the source of many an issue and we all know that. We know. But in a previous video I discussed how every time Kanye does something there's a whole slew of people with opinions about bipolar disorder. So I am going to address some tweets that I've seen. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the little search bar on Twitter and I'm going to type bipolar and I'm going to see what comes up. Because I hate myself apparently. And I'm just going to react to the ones that I see and I'm going to talk a little bit about why they may or may not be accurate or harmful. I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I have worked in the mental health field for 5 years in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. I'm a music therapist and I live with bipolar disorder. I've had this diagnosis since college. I'm not sure when in college, maybe age 19? Maybe? But bipolar disorder is something that impacts every aspect of my life. It's a chronic condition. I'm not likely to be cured of bipolar disorder because it is chronic. I'll get more into the facts about bipolar disorder as I address some of these tweets, but yeah, bipolar. Okay, so the first tweet I came across is actually a response to Kim Kardashian's post or tweet, which is I think a congratulations to Biden and Harris. It's just a picture of them and then some blue hearts. So the reply says, "Not when you and your people voted for your genius, crazy bipolar husband. Besides, aren't you friends with Donnie?" I'm not going to address the political aspect of this, but so we're going to talk about this, just break this down a little bit. So the first part is genius with the quotation marks there. There's actually this very typical thought of the, I guess, the mad genius. We see it in literature as the mad scientist trope. We hear the phrase, there's a fine line between genius and insanity, or various variations on that topic. So the thing about bipolar disorder is that we have these periods of mania. Mania is this heightened feeling of euphoria, everything's great, you're enthusiastic, you experience increased activity, increased creativity, or at least it feels that way. It feels like you can take over the world. Some people get far enough to where they experience delusions or grandiose, ideas. So maybe they think that they are like the best something of all time, which we actually hear a lot in show business, but there are a lot of people in show business that are bipolar. So there is this idea of the genius bipolar person because we do experience increased creativity. So if we're already creative people, because we experience these heightened emotions and these heightened feelings, which lends itself to creativity, sometimes we might think of ourselves as geniuses and sometimes other people might think of us as creative genius or something. That doesn't necessarily mean that we are a genius or that we're not a genius. It just means that that's something that people kind of perceive a lot with that. And then we have the typical crazy bipolar husband. Crazy is another one of those words that is just, it's harmful. The reason people might say things like, you're driving me crazy and stuff like that, and different people have different views about if that's harmful or not, so that's individual. I try not to use it because working with people who are mentally ill, they've heard that their whole lives probably, and I don't want them to hear that word in any context because I need them to focus on them and their treatment. So I try to avoid using that word at all at work. So I also try to avoid using it in my day-to-day so I don't slip up and use it at work. But equating a mental illness to craziness diminishes what it actually is. It basically simplifies what a mental illness is into just behaviors to be written off as irrational and senseless and behaviors that don't have explanation and things like that, which is not accurate because mental illnesses, a lot of them, especially bipolar disorder, are caused by chemical imbalances in your brain, and your brain is an organ which is part of your body. So any other sickness, it's the same thing. Okay, so this one is Kim Kardashian's post again. Someone replied to it, I think Jake Tapper? Yeah, Jake Tapper, the CNN anchor, quote tweeted it with a big question mark. I don't know what his purpose was for that, but someone replied to that, "Is bipolar disorder contagious?" It is not. Bipolar disorder is not contagious. You cannot catch it from somebody. There are genetic factors to bipolar disorder because it is a mental illness that is based in chemical imbalances, which are again physical, so they can be inherited. It has a strong genetic component, but it is not contagious. You might find that people with bipolar disorder attract each other. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know I've met several people that have it, and you just kind of know. It's like you see it. Since we have a tendency to start a lot of different creative ventures because of just who we are, we end up meeting a lot of people who are like us and also do the same thing, but it's not contagious. And also doing so, I'm not saying I agree with anything that any Kardashian's ever done, but suggesting that bipolar disorder is contagious is kind of gross to me. But also writing off a woman as just bipolar. You shouldn't write off people because they're bipolar anyway, because it's a mental illness. It's not anything to do with the validity of their statements. Writing off someone's post as being mentally ill or trying to label someone as mentally ill when you don't know the person personally is an issue. There are a lot of tweets in Spanish with the word bipolar in them, but I don't know what they say. This person quote tweeted something that was like, your first 6 emojis explains your life right now. No cheating. And they posted 6 different smileys, and they said bipolar AF, like me. Okay, so bipolar doesn't mean happy, sad, laughing, angry. That's not how bipolar disorder works. While you can experience mood swings, it's long periods of certain states. So an episode of depression where your energy is low, you feel hopeless, you feel helpless, apathetic, things like that. And then these periods of high energy where you're, feel like you can conquer the world and things like that. Those are things you experience. However, you can also experience mixed episodes where you kind of have symptoms of both. And you can also experience things called dysthymia and hypomania. So dysthymia is not quite depression, but it's kind of a lower state that maintains itself. And then hypomania is not quite mania. It's kind of a little bit between your average state and mania, but it maintains itself and has a lot of the same traits as mania. It just doesn't go full-blown mania. But you're not like crying one second, angry the next second, this. That's not the typical presentation of bipolar disorder. I mean, I think we've all had days where we've been that way, but that's not what bipolar disorder is. That's just general moodiness or mood lability, which you can experience with bipolar disorder, but it's not like what bipolar disorder is. Okay, so this person, I believe, is talking about Sherlock and also Elementary. And they say, having seen most of Sherlock, I now stand by my initial assessment from years ago. Sherlock does present the detective as along the sociopathic scale and does it amazingly. Elementary, on the other hand, presents a version much more reminiscent of bipolar highs and lows, especially with the manic speech patterns Miller uses. So this person is responding to a fictional character who may or may not exhibit traits of bipolar disorder. So they talked about how in Sherlock exhibits some sociopathic tendencies. I'm not going to talk about that. Sociopathy is more of a personality construct that I'm not going to go into. If you're curious about it, you should watch Dr. Grande. He's a psychiatrist on YouTube that I find fascinating. Not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about the bipolar part of this. So he talks about bipolar highs and lows, which is accurate. We do have highs and lows, especially with the manic speech patterns Miller uses. So when it comes to manic speech patterns, there's something called pressured speech, where it's almost like the words are just spilling out. And to be honest, it's one of the main things that clues me into I may be experiencing a manic episode or hypomania right now. That is a real thing. When people are manic, they do have this tendency to just like word vomit everywhere, because your brain is moving so fast and so loud that you have all these ideas and thoughts and you need to get them out immediately before they kind of slip away. So that's definitely something that is realistic. And I think it's totally fair to analyze fictional characters and kind of think about maybe this person has symptoms of this mental illness and things like that. And this person's not diagnosing them, they're just recognizing similar traits. So I think that's a more accurate tweet. Oh, here's one. I don't know what they're talking about. They're like saying DSOC is the coolest. I love them so much, especially Opal. And then they say, just kidding, I hate Opal. And then the next tweet they say, sorry guys, I'm a little bipolar right now. So bipolar isn't liking something and then not liking something. It's not how it works, because that's called preference. It's not the same thing. And also, you can't just be a little bipolar. Bipolar is a diagnosis. You either have it or you don't. Some people have worse symptoms than others. Some people are managing it better than others, depending on, your access to medical care and your willingness to engage in that medical care. You can have episodes of depression and mania, but you don't have a little bit bipolar here and a little bit there. I'm always bipolar because it's chronic. That's in Spanish. Don't know what that says. Pretty sure that's in Russian. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this person is actually replying to a tweet about ADHD, and they said, not helpful, but for example, I was misdiagnosed with ADHD when I was really bipolar. Some people don't believe in mental illness at all, though. And so they're talking about misdiagnosis, which actually ADHD and bipolar disorder are comorbid a lot of times, which means that somebody might have both, but also one can be misdiagnosed as the other and vice versa. They have a lot of similar traits, and that's why diagnoses aren't always set in stone. It's not like, this is an orange and this is a rock. Diagnoses are just kind of a way of describing a bunch of symptoms that someone's experiencing at once. So you'll find that there's a lot of things that overlap. I've had one medical professional say that I have ADHD, bipolar disorder, and OCD, and another one says that I have ADHD, bipolar disorder, and PTSD, because something about the way my symptoms work, they might present differently to different people, and things can be kind of confusing. But I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and ADHD, but again, there's so much overlap there that it's not like, oh, you have to have either this or this. Plus, a lot of providers address the symptoms more than the diagnosis itself, which is what you should do because everybody is very different. So that is something that makes sense to me. This person says, where do I return the bipolar depression anxiety portion of my brain? I'm over having it and have decided I would like to give it back. Me too. I would love to give it back. When you're manic, it feels very awesome to have bipolar disorder because you feel like you're on top of the world and you create anything, especially as a creative person who likes to make stuff. I like to write songs, I like to sing, I like to do art type things, I like to make stuff. It can feel like you have a little bit of a superpower, but then when you come down and you crash from those highs, you don't want it anymore. And unfortunately, you can't return it because it's chronic. You can't magically cure it. Moving on to the side. Oh, here we go. Here's one. This person says, I get over shit too fast. Think I'm bipolar. Bipolar disorder doesn't have anything to do with quickness to forgive or quickness to move on from things. However, I guess if you're maybe in a really, really good heightened state and something happens, you might be able to move on from it really quick and be like, it's okay because guess what? I'm on top of the world and I have bread to make or something random that you've decided to go off and do because projects. So this person's arguing about politics with somebody. I'm not going to go into the politics aspect of it, but they end it with, that's not a democracy and you're bipolar. And the person has, you know, a username that implies that they are bipolar. But then I don't get how they're just like, and you're bipolar, as if that's like the cherry on the top of their argument, which doesn't make any sense because being bipolar doesn't have anything to do with your opinions. And being bipolar doesn't prove someone else right and you wrong. That's not how that works. Okay, so the New York Times posted about President Trump and the fact that he refuses to acknowledge that the race is over. Someone replied with terrible spelling. His worse than a bipolar woman on her period. What? Okay, so thinking about this. Bipolar disorder is very up and down. Being on your period means your hormones are a mess. So I guess together the two do not have a great combination. But implying that a woman on her period who has bipolar disorder has no self-control and acts like an actual infant is insulting. Because that's not how that works. That's not how any of this works. Okay, so this one. Oh. I'm not sure why that one got me, but it did. This one says, would you date a person with bipolar disorder? And it's a poll. And it had 31% yes and 69% no. So that's sad because when I was dating my now husband, I remember the day that I told him I was bipolar. I was very ready for him to be done with me when I said that. I told him and I was ready for him to be, you know, I was giving him an out basically because I know it's a chronic thing. And I knew that he would, if you know, he pursued a relationship with me that was serious and was planning to be long-term with me, then that's something he was going to have to deal with for, you know, however long we were together. And once we got married, he was going to have to deal with that for the rest of our life. Till death to us part, sucker. It's always sad to see that a trait you have is considered, you know, not acceptable to, you know, for a partner or a friend or a confidant, you know. That hurts a little. Ooh, this is good. Okay, so this person did, after watching Insecure this week, I guess that's a show, it touched on a good topic. Would you date someone who confessed to you they were bipolar or they were dealing with some other mental health issue? This person said depends. They said on, and the person said how long they've been diagnosed, are they following their treatment plans, meds, therapy, etc., and what expectations do they have from their partner, etc. And the person said that's a good answer, which I agree. When it comes to dating or being in a relationship or even a friendship with someone who has a mental illness, it's good to know these things, but also know that you're not entitled to that information. Now, if you're pursuing a long-term relationship with someone, that's part of the being open and honest part of relationship. However, it is good to know these things, you know, because when it comes to bipolar disorder, we're not a monolith and we can live with it. However, we do have to make sure we're following these things. That's a choice that we have. We don't have a choice to have it or not, but we do have the choice to address it and take care of it and be honest about it or not. So that's a responsibility we have to take. We didn't choose to have it. We didn't choose the cards that we were dealt, but we have to play them. Here's one of my favorite ones. Nashville about to make my allergies go crazy with this bipolar weather. I've seen people make the argument, it's like the two poles of the earth. You got the North Pole and the South Pole, and it's hot and cold. Except for that's not how that works either, because they're both cold. But also, weather is not bipolar because it's hot and cold. I guess it does have seasons and episodes. But describing the weather as bipolar is kind of trivializing it as a term. Which is a shame because it's a life-altering mental illness. Yeah, there's a lot of weather ones. Okay, so this person says, so this one says, crazy to think about how bipolar was thrown around so loosely growing up. Yes. So bipolar was thrown around as an insult in my family and in, you know, a lot of circles that I encountered growing up. It was often used to discredit what a woman was saying and their concerns about a situation. They may have been referred to as being bipolar. And that's also not how it works. You don't get to discount someone's emotions as a mental illness. And you also don't get to discount someone's emotions when it's mental illness. Because even if it is the mental illness that's making them feel a certain way, they're still experiencing those emotions genuinely. So just don't discount people's feelings. I don't know. Oh, okay. Here's a couple of posts. It says, I'm so sick of my bipolar episodes lately. I'm happy, then I'm mad, then I'm sad, then I'm cleaning every speck of dust in my entire apartment. That is a really common thing for bipolar disorder. When you're manic, a lot of people will clean and just clean and clean and clean and clean and organize. Some people decide to crochet several Baby Yodas, and some people decide to clean their house until it's spotless. I'm sad and mad tonight. I just want to have normal moods. I'm just glad I have all my friends on here. I definitely need y'all tonight. It's so important to have a good support system because at some point when you're bipolar, you're going to have those moments where you're like, I don't need medications because I feel good. And you need people to kind of call you out and be like, you feel good because of the medications. It's really common for people that have bipolar disorder to go off their medications because of that very feeling. And there was a really good reply to that, which I'm going to also go through. Hang on and ride them out. When it comes to moods, you have to just remember that they are temporary and that they will change at some point, and sometimes that's the only way you can get through them. I am lucky to be mostly stable right now. Sometimes with bipolar disorder, you will have periods where you feel like you're pretty stable, especially when you're on medications, you're going to therapy, you're very involved in your treatment. After lockdown, I got a little crazy. Any change in routine can actually trigger episodes, but I kept it tucked in at work. Being bipolar is so hard sometimes. Luckily, my job keeps me even. I find that my job actually really helps me as well. Having a job makes me have to go to sleep at a certain time and have to get up at a certain time, and having bad sleep schedules are huge triggers for bipolar disorder also. As much as I would love to do all-night reading vlogs with people and do 24-hour readathons, I can't do that anymore. I would love to, but I know that it will trigger an episode, which is really unfortunate because I used to love all-nighters. In college, I slept maybe every other night because of all the mania I experienced, and I would love to have those experiences with other people on, you know, this platform when we do like 24-hour reading vlogs, 24-hour whatever, you know, it's right and stuff like that. But I can't do that anymore. It's just not something I can do. I would love to. I could stay awake all night. I can do it, but if I do it, it will hurt me and it will hurt my progress, and I put too much into my treatment to throw it out for that. So I definitely feel like having a job can keep you really good and even. But those are all of the tweets I'm going to react to today. If you liked this video, let me know if you'd like to see me do more on other mental health topics or even more on this topic. If you have any questions about bipolar disorder, let me know. I'll be happy to try to answer them or point you in the right direction if you're curious. If you have bipolar disorder and you don't mind talking about it, let me know. If you've experienced any of these things, if you can relate to any of these things. If you've learned anything from this video, let me know, because I'd like to know if I'm actually helping at all. But if you liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and don't forget to let out that breath you didn't know you were holding. Bye! Tripping over shadows and I'm drowning in the night. I feel the soldiers coming, I'm putting up a fight.